Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Tracy Jones of Tremendous Leadership. Catch me this week on the Tremendous Jesse T Show.
The mighty, the powerful, the amazing Dr. Tracy Jones. Welcome to the Jesse T Show.
Thank you, Jesse. It's an honor to be here.
It's a pleasure. I love you. I think you're amazing. I know you're amazing. You have a great life's journey. You have powerful influences in your life that have helped shape you and mold you into this amazing human being that you are today. And I just want to share a little bit of your journey. So if you could just share a little context and color of who you are.
Oh, I am a student of life. I tell people I'm a middle child that was raised by a father who was a motivational speaker. So that gives you a little bit of context. As a middle child, for all you middle children out there, we're the flexible ones. We're the, whatever happens, we like change. We're kind of adaptable. So I had that going for me, which is nice, right? Like Bill Murray and Caddyshack.
Oh yeah. Oh
Googa
yeah.
Googa from the top of the mountain. The other thing was my father was a motivational speaker. I tell people it was like a cross between boot camp and a sitcom. So I grew up as this guinea pig that was always sitting around phenomenal, successful, driven, good people and reading books. Like I earned my allowance by reading tremendous books and doing
Wow.
book reports. And you worked and there wasn't a lot of idle time. And he took the TVs out of the house when I was a teenager, right? Crazy. Can you imagine that today? Because that was the boob tube and you need to do stuff that really edifies your life. So I grew up with this outlook of there's no thumb sucking, you own everything, and you hang around tremendous people and tremendous books and you become a tremendous person. So that's the context of my life. Crazy, right?
It's beautiful, and it's something that we should aspire to in different areas. Is role modeling and setting the stage and creating the space for success. I mean, I want to hear about your dad and what he did, but also how was it for you in terms of as a kid? Were you, because obviously it makes sense for you now and you're happy that that happened, but were you bought in as a kid? Were you pissed off because you couldn't watch the boob tube, as you say? Like where was your headspace growing through these years? And like what was your function in terms of like, were you taking this message and deploying it right away, or was it something that came around later in life?
Great questions. Well, I really enjoyed it. I knew that to live a different life, you had to be different. So I always knew we were kind of peculiar, odd ducks, which is kind of why I always resonate with those people. Why be normal? Normal is boring, okay? Like American Beauty. Nobody wants to be normal.
Nope.
And so I really did embrace it growing up. Not every kid did. Some of my other siblings, it didn't go over so well. So for the parents out there, you got to know the child and understand if this is going to resonate with this. But I was all in with my dad, and all I kept seeing was I want to grow up. I mean, I had a great childhood, but I was always excited about I want to be an adult and I want to go out and I do want to do great things and become a great leader and impact people's lives. So I was okay with not watching TV. There wasn't much going on, back then, and I did kind of buy into it. I really was not that into books. I did it, did his book reports, to earn money. But I didn't develop a real love of reading until much later on in life. But that's okay. The lessons were really great. He gave me really wonderful, positive role models. And it was fun because we would travel with him to his speaking engagements. He'd pack us all up in an RV with books, 6 kids, my mom, and in this VW pop up camper. And one time we drove from Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, all the way down to Mexico City. So
Wow.
that was my summers. And so I always got to see great events with a lot of high energy people and cool places, Vegas, Disney World, Knott's Berry Farm. So we just didn't do a lot of idle things. Everything was very purposeful, but we got to see a lot of the world too. So it was a pretty cool upbringing. One of the things
Wow.
though, Jesse, he kept telling me was, Tracy, you have to go out and earn your stripes. And what that meant was you can't live in anybody else's shadow. And of course, I took it literally and went into the military, into the
Yes.
Air Force. You can see a little bit of my journey back there. But he really let me know, you know, don't fear trying new things and don't fear failure. Earn your stripes. And the harder, the better. And the harder you fall, the better your war story. So just get out there. So I went into the military and then I went into high volume manufacturing, the semiconductor industry. Then I went into defense contracting. Then I went into publishing. So, like I said, middle kid and just open that life is not about the outcomes, but really adapting to each and every way in a creative way. So that's kind of what he taught us.
That's a powerful lesson, and many lessons, not just a singular lesson. And that, for someone who's a seeker of information and experiences and thirsty for knowledge, today, that sounds like the dream childhood. But knowing myself when I was younger, I would have rebelled pretty much, and I would have. That's just who I was. Because I guess maybe I don't know if there's a book Birth Order. I haven't read it yet, but I am the youngest, and I don't know
Oh, yeah.
if the youngest is the rebel, but I am.
Yes. Yes, they are. I married a youngest. They're definitely rebel. Yeah,
Yeah,
they are.
yeah. They can't tell me what to do unless I ask you to tell me what to do.
No, and you know what? That's a great point because for me, being in the military and being in big
Oh,
bureaucracies, I am very much. I didn't hone my entrepreneurial chops until my mid 40s. Now I sensed it because I'm very much. I'm an engineer by trade, so I'm very much analytical. I like processes. I like rules, and I like people to do the right thing.
yep.
Okay, so I respected that, but then you get into bureaucracies, Jesse, and you
I
know as
know.
well as I do, there's not a lot of rule following going on in most organizations.
No.
Favoritism, nepotism, flat out stuff that you don't want to be caught doing.
Yep.
And it's everywhere. It's not indicative of any gender, race, religion. It's people. So I kept getting this. Oh, my dad always told me, Tracy, you can work for somebody else or you can work for yourself. But as long as you work for somebody else, you're always going to hit this wall. And I tell people, they're like, was it the glass ceiling? And I'm like, no, it was the jackass ceiling. Okay.
Wow.
Because there's, I had a lot of great men in my life and I had like a lot of great women and there's a couple idiots every here and there, but welcome to life. There's
Right.
idiots everywhere. You just, when you find them, you steer clear of them. But it just really, he really taught me until you own what you're doing, you're always going to sit there after, and I tell people after the 6-month honeymoon period where you go, what am I doing here? And am I really free to serve in this position in the greatest capacity?
Mm.
And you heard my background. I went from job to vocation. I lived all over the world, different industries, thinking, no, this is it. No, this is it. No, the defense of the country. No, changing the world with technology. No, the National Security Agency. And eventually it would be like, yay. And then I'm like, it's the same crap, different day. And I had to really go, what is the purest and highest use of my time? What is the greatest platform? And all this was happening as my father was succumbing to cancer.
Mm.
And I pivoted on pain. I tell people, don't pivot with purpose. But I pivoted with pain. And I was so tired and burnt out, Jesse, after 20 years of running around trying to do the right thing, making more money, but feeling unbelievably just empty and like, this isn't doing it for me. And I came back home 3 months after he immigrated to heaven. And that's where I have been the last 12 years.
What a powerful journey. And it's I want to touch back on me, because we're brothers and sisters in arms, and I was in the Navy for a while, and it was at a time where I needed structure and I needed to be put back on a path where belief could be instilled in me, confidence, leadership, and all these things. But at the same time, it was a place where I was very raw, it was very rough. And when people were telling me what to do that I didn't feel like they were qualified to do so, I got really like I got butt hurt. so, and then years later, once I honed the craft and polished up and I got into banking, banking's extremely political. And I did really well playing the game, but I didn't feel authentic.
Mhm.
I didn't
Mhm.
feel like it was really where I should be. And it just wasn't serving me. So it's interesting because we have these experiences, much like that jackass that you talked about that may not have been a good leader or a good coworker. They shine a light on what's important and what you should be doing. Like you
Sure.
could use them as a tailwind versus a headwind. And so talk about your dad a little bit more, because I think that's really important. To it's obviously you ooze over him and the way that you speak about him and the way that you hold him in reverence and all these different things. What was his path like in terms of his journey?
Oh,
Entrepreneur, author, speaker. Talk about that a little bit.
well, he started out, he was born in Alabama. Uh, in poverty back in 1927. Okay, Great Depression era. Growing up in that, he was the oldest of 5 children, and his mother left them. And he grew up thinking there was no such thing as love because you always have the mother's love, right? Well, his mother left them. Now,
Mm.
long story short, they had since remedied and had reconnected later in life. But she was young in her teens, back then, and just left.
Yep.
So here was my dad in poverty and growing up in the deep South. and really nothing. And then in eighth grade, he flunked out of school in the eighth grade
Wow.
because he was working jobs and he was getting up at 2 in the morning to go and work because you had to work. It's not like today. You don't work, you don't eat. Okay. It's like that in a lot of other countries in the world.
Yes.
So he would go and get up, and he was so tired in school that he just slept. And he had flunked out of the eighth grade, and they said, you have to repeat the eighth grade. And he was so embarrassed, he left school in the eighth grade.
Wow.
And you know how many wonderful, incredible people there are that the eighth grade was as far as they got? There's so many of them.
I believe
And
it.
so, but he had just this unbelievable work ethic, and he was close with my grandfather, Deacon, and he took him up to Alaska to work on the pipeline. But three things happened to my father. Okay. He moved up and he moved to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and he met my mother, Gloria Jones. Okay. And he actually met a woman that believed in him.
Mm.
Okay. And she was so shy. She was the exact opposite of him. And just this beautiful, they look like, Ron and Nancy Reagan, little
Okay.
petite, blue-eyed blonde, and he's this tall, statuesque, dark, handsome man. And so he met Gloria, and they eloped after 13 weeks. Okay, because
Wow.
he's like, I was scared she was going to find out what I was really like, and I couldn't let her get away. So then my father got into the life insurance business with Mutual New York. So there was a group that taught him, and my father just had this unbelievable work ethic, and he loved life insurance because he was helping people. So he started growing a huge business at Mutual New York, and then somebody jumped into his car and introduced him to Christ. So those three
Wow.
things. And that's when he was like, he had heard a lot about it. And that day he said, I either got to plant my flag and live like the Bible's true, or I'm never opening it again. And that's what he tells people. You have to go all in on whatever you do. He was
No
an
question.
all in person. So he was all in with Gloria. He was all in with life insurance, and he was all in with his relationship with Christ. And so then he grew this industry to 100 million. This was when he was 37. So this
That's
is way
very
back,
impressive.
yeah, back in the late 50s before I even came in, because there's six of us. So there's 17 years between all of us. So there's kind of the older family, and then there's the younger family. I'm part of the two at the very end. And he then, and you'll love this, he left the life insurance industry to go with another company. And after 1 year of being with them, he was let go. And
Mm.
he again was shocked. And he was so embarrassed. He didn't go back to Mutual New York, although he could have, because he was kind of the burn the ships kind of guy. Once I leave this,
Same.
it's all, and like I said, when I left the military, I didn't burn the ships, but I'm done.
Yeah.
This chapter's closed. Yeah. So you're like that too. So he went and he wrote a book called Life is Tremendous back in 1967, which has never gone out of print.
Wow.
And he just started speaking to anybody that would listen. And then this book has sold millions and millions and millions of copies, never gone out of print. And he became a world renowned speaker, author, hugger extraordinaire, and just class act motivator, because he knew what it hurt, what it felt like to hurt,
Mm.
but he allowed no one to give any excuse. And he was, you talk about tough love. I would have men call me even to this day on the phone crying about my father yelling at them, but then they weep tears of joy because it was the best thing that ever happened, because he
Wow.
was just like, you cannot feel sorry for yourself. I love you too much to let you wallow in this. So this, the velvet glove, this beautiful shakeup, but just intense compassion, because he came from nothing and he knew what it was like to hurt. But he looked at everybody and he saw that God seed in everybody, and he would not let you walk out of there feeling sorry for yourself, or not suddenly going, why not me and why not now? So that was his journey. And just like I said, and then from no formal education to being one of the top 25 legends of personal development, all because he wanted it.
Unbelievable. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. And a lot of people do come from that rags to riches. And a lot of people do, you know, that based on that journey, they're almost called to a ministry, whether it's Christ or other, but they're basically like their mess is their message, and their journey is the gospel. And they're very devout based on that experience, that they'll change lives along the way.
Right. And he lived it. And that's why he was so authentic. And he resonated with people from all different walks of life and faith, because he was just like, listen, I'm just going to share my journey with you. And people, it was a time where people respected that, and he respected them. You know what I'm saying? And it was just so beautiful to watch him really, the power of when you just look somebody deep into their soul And, and I'm glad he's in heaven during these times, because this not hugging or not getting out, it just wouldn't have been his cup of tea.
I'll tell you, he and I are kindred spirits in many ways, from the poor, the growing up tough, to making something of yourself, to getting out and speaking and leading and teaching. And the hugs are still there, just so you know.
Yes,
I had
me too.
yeah, I hug everyone, and I had a retreat a few weeks ago where it was the currency of hello was hugs. So
Oh,
the
I love it.
yeah, there's it's definitely still there. We are facing some dark times, but in the dark times, there's been a beautiful surge of consciousness and spirituality and faith and connectedness. And so I truly believe and know in my heart that we're facing these times so that we can amplify and grow and eventually unify truly. And
I,
so, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and you hit the nail on the head. And his point was, you may not feel it, but you got to know it.
Yeah.
And like you said, Jesse, when you are grounded, and he always said there's only 3 decisions in your life you'll ever make. In fact, we have a little booklet called The 3 Decisions: who you're going to live your life with, what are you going to live your life doing, and who are you going to live your life for. Once you know those, once you have those purpose points nailed down, those orientations, everything else makes sense, even the really hard stuff.
Yeah.
And so he would really just there, and he'd say, you can, I feel like quitting all the time, I just don't do it. Okay, just don't do it.
Right.
So everybody's caught up in these feelings, and I'm like, man, that's a dangerous road. But it's what you know, because when you know, you're grounded and you won't give up.
When you have your core tenets and your truths that are clearly defined, it's easy for you to say no to the things that don't align with that. And it's
Perfect.
easy for you to go where you're going, who you're going with, how you're getting there, what you're doing along the way becomes crystal clear, because you know those things. And those are 3 beautiful tenets. I mean, knowing who you want to do life with, your tribe, as I call it,
Mm.
knowing, how you want to do life. And that's how you show up in the world every day, and knowing how you want to be of service to others or to a higher power. Like, these are things that will clearly define the next steps. And a beautiful thing about that is, and I've been talking about this a lot with friends and just acquaintances, the art of saying no. And some of the biggest, best, brightest entrepreneurs are masters of time. Some a little too much. I think Elon Musk blocks out his day 5 minutes at a time, which, again, he's an alien. I'm convinced. And I love it. We have an alien amongst us. We could probably talk about this, because there's been a lot more on that. But, and I know in your world of aircraft, long story short, there's been documentation, Pentagon's released things about UFOs. Anyway, so just in that vein of saying no and guarding your time and protecting things that are not in alignment with you, it really it helps people a lot of times when they're first getting like into entrepreneurship. And I wonder if you felt this too. Like, we feel like we have to say yes to everything. We feel we have to overcommit. We feel we have to take on every client. We have to take on every project. We have to do everything ourselves. And that leads to a road of burnout and unhappiness faster than anything else. And once I learned the art of saying no, this was actually 2 or 3 years ago, it became a beautiful way to like
Mm.
even help people. Like, so like, you weren't leading people on, you weren't being disingenuous, you weren't half showing up, half truthing, like you were in your truth. And that
Oh
was
man,
so powerful.
half truthing. Yeah. I love that. I'm writing that down. That's absolutely beautiful. And, also saying no, but also clearly defining who's your avatar.
Yep.
Who's going to get you, Jesse? Who's going to look at you? And, they always say in sales, people are going to gravitate to you for one of 2 reasons: either a solution or a feeling.
Yep.
So not everybody's going to be picking up what I'm putting down. Don't waste your time with them. Vet them, vet your customer, because it's a professional, it's matchmaking. And you don't want to just, I can look at some groups where they're asking me to come speak, and I'm like, they're not going to like what I have to say, because, how did I know that? Because in the beginning, they'd be sitting there in the audience looking at me like, this woman's insane, and I'm like, okay, this is not the group. And other people are like, oh, like little baby birds waiting for me to drop it in their mouth. So know who it is. And like you said, then don't waste your time with that. There's plenty of other speakers that they can go listen to. And it just, what did Bob Berg say? It's your posture. It's posturing. I'm interested, but not too much, because if this isn't a really good value congruence fit, it's okay. Let's get you to somebody else. And I do that in publishing. Oh, we're going to publish everybody's book. No, that dilutes the brand. It
Yes.
doesn't make sense. Let them go to people that really get their space and can really help them get it out there.
And when people find out, that's a well articulated point. And just the alignment of, it comes back to those core tenets that you mentioned for yourself, and not diluting yourself or your brand, or trying to be everything to everyone. You really can't. And so like, even for entrepreneurs, niching down is super important.
Oh,
Yes, you want to help people and serve people,
right.
and you can be of service in many ways. But when it comes to being a business operator, you're really going to find one or two target markets, like you said, avatars, whatever you want to call them, but people that you show up for uniquely, and you can provide a unique solution that's tailor fitted to what they're looking for. And I'll even go a step further. So after banking, I got into financial planning, but I did it through life insurance. I did it through mutual funds. I did it through annuities. So like kind of like the insurance based products that were
Mhm.
quasi financial planning products. And in that world, as you know, probably very well, it's always hunting. It's always the people that do best in those roles are the people that work their asses off and are students. And so it's just a whole lifestyle. And every single day you're out there hunting for the next prospect, the next prospect. You're posting and planning at the end of the night. You're getting up early, and you're doing all this work, which is great. But for me, I always felt a little disingenuous because of the method of delivery. Like I wasn't fully qualified to have a holistic financial planning conversation, but
Mm.
also because I needed to sell something. And this is coming from a sales guy at heart. I needed to sell something every single time, and it didn't feel like that was an alignment for me. So I decided pretty early on in that career that I was going to move into what I do today, which is a fiduciary, where I could give advice on everything and what's perfect for the client in the moment. And the whole gist of that conversation is I date my clients. So I don't have to go out and pick every single client. I actually have a client family. People that I bring into my client family are people that I want to do business and life with. They don't
Right.
have to be, on the same exact path that I'm on. It's nice if they are, if they're on this consciousness awakening and they're into health and wellness and they like certain things, like that's great. But they do have to fall into some sort of parameters, which are the 3 Ps. And I learned this from a mentor. And the 3 Ps are, really, it comes down to a military term that you're going to probably be familiar with. I don't want any PETAs in my business, and I don't want any pain in the asses in my business. People that are going to question every little thing I do and give me shit for it. Like that's not something I'm ever going to be down with, because that's the rebel like saying no thank you. But the 3 Ps are personality. Do we like each other?
Mhm.
At some level, do we like each other? Do we trust each other? That's a huge tenet of doing business with someone. Participation. In my world, something as simple as the onboarding process can make or break the relationship, where I need a lot of front end work from the client. I need them to do assessments so I can learn who they are, how they take action, how I can coach and lead them better. I need them to send me a bunch of financials and things like wills and trusts and documents on the very front end. Then after that, they don't really have to ever lift their finger again. But if
Right.
they're not willing to participate in their own success, I can't make them drink the water when I've brought them to the water, kind of thing. And then the last thing is profit. Are you going to do better monetarily? We're in the financial planning game. Like, are you going to do better because you have this relationship with me, and vice versa? And so I
Right.
think that once you've identified those specific things for you, client that you want to work with, how you want to work with them, how you want your quality of life to be, it completely changed my business from where it was back in the day to where it is now.
Right. Right. And I love the PETA. I was just going to say to you, PETA. Yeah, I have a PETA fee. I'm like, it's $100 million. It's there just sometimes it's just there's not enough money in the world. And it's good to know that, because um uh, value yourself, and you don't want a headache, and life shouldn't be that hard all the time, and you shouldn't be dealing with contrary, neurotic, talk about personality traits. And my 3 Ps are, P for personality. I
Yes.
want you to have that, they say some people brighten a room when they enter it, others when they leave. I want the first.
Yeah.
I want the people that just bring that atmosphere. Okay.
Yes.
I want to work with publishing is fun. Okay. And if you're already grousy, I don't want to work with you, because you kill the joy out of putting your words down to change other people's lives. So personality, past experiences, you got to have some cred, some street cred.
That's
Okay.
right.
Otherwise I get people that have only done stuff in theory. And I'm like, yeah, but you haven't it's where the rubber meets the sky.
Yeah.
Let's talk about real life. My dad was always so pragmatic, so optimistic, but so real. So it's this beautiful, dyadic kind of the flip side of every coin. Life is joyful. Life is also hell.
Yep.
Let's find this. Let's just get on with it. So it's personality, past experience, and then perspective. Do you want to make the world a better place? And that's why
Nice.
you write a book. If it's all about, well, I just want to get famous, or I just want it for me. No, that's not a good enough motivation kind of thing. So yeah, I'm all about the P's and the
Love it.
Pitas.
I love it. And identifying who we want to work with, and like going back to that ideal client, it's going to give you quality of life. At the end of the
Yes.
day, we're on a journey, we're on a road, we have goals, which are important. But at the same time, for me, I've learned that it's the moments, because I think I've told you this. I've held death in my hands a couple times with family members, and it's taught me the perspective of time.
Right.
And even though I'm a goals oriented guy, I'm a Capricorn, I'm a doer. Obviously, I'm a guy, which is like a doer, like all this stuff. I've learned that being on the awareness and present path during those goal chasing moments is really the secret sauce to doing life. And
It is. It
yeah,
is. And a lot of us want to be all things to all people, like you said, but as you said, the niche, somebody told me the more niche you go, the more you grow.
yep,
And that sounds counterintuitive. Wait, I'm turning down stuff. And the great kind of example everybody uses is, who makes more money? A general practitioner or a medical specialist or an
no
orthopedic
question,
surgeon?
no
The
question.
specialist, because you hone that one thing. Spark is singularity. What's that one thing that you do better than anybody else? And like you said, your mess is your message. And I have people go, well, I'm not the best in the world at anything. And I go, yeah, your experience is your expertise. You're the only one that's lived what you've lived. Somehow, for whatever reason, you were put through this. Now take this and use this, because you're probably passionate about it. And it's the old gig, good to great. And then that drives your economic engine, because we have to be making a living doing this. Otherwise, it's just a hobby. So
Yes,
we should be building wealth. You can do good and do well. They're not mutually exclusive.
not at all. And
And when you
actually,
dial them in, they'll both pop.
exactly, when you're in complete alignment and truth with who you are, what you do, and how you show up in the world, that actually becomes even more powerful. And if you can learn how to create revenue, wealth, and abundance through your efforts, I mean, that's a life well lived. And so, really quick, I want to jump back. You mentioned a 3-letter alphabet agency, NSA.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
National Security Agency.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I was a
So
government contractor, and I ran a project for them. Took care of uh, mailroom, hospital, HVAC, engineering, mail, janitor, you name it. So I was kind of a super duper project manager of running this facility.
did you, at the time that you were in, hear the name Edward Snowden?
Yes. Oh, but no, but he was right. I got out. Let me see. When did I get out? 2008. So that was more after.
Just
But
after. Yeah.
yeah, just after. Yep.
Okay. I was going to get into details. I was just wondering, A, if you know him, if you
I
know where
don't
he is,
know him.
if you know where he is, don't tell anyone.
I
But
don't.
okay, okay. So yeah, we'll
And if
kind
I
of.
told you, I'd have to kill you. I'd have to
Oh,
cut off
you
your
don't
head.
have to do that. I don't want to know that bad. So talk about, you've mentioned publishing, and it seems like this is one of your callings and your passion. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, my father always said, if you've been through something, you need to get it out in a book. I even think about the
Mm,
Bible. Yeah, Jesus walked the earth, but the number one best-selling book of all time is still the Bible. What if we didn't have the written word, sharing the written, not only written, but living word? So my father always told everybody, if you have a zone of genius, and we all do, you need a book, because Jesse, we can't be everywhere. I mean, we can now because we can record stuff,
social media,
but
yeah.
back in the day, you could only be one place at one time. And so a book can go so much further than you can. And that's your legacy piece. I'm still opening drawers and finding things my father wrote down. I have one coming out called The Love of God for Father's Day, a recording of his. So he was like,
Wow.
listen, who knows when we're going to get called to glory? It could happen today. Okay. So write down what you've got, because that way, otherwise it's selfish. You're not sharing what you've been through and these epiphanies and these inspirations. And so he was very much, he was back in the day, 50 years ago, he was telling speakers, you got to have a book, you got to have a book, you got to have a book. And so that's really, he would tell them, it enhances your credibility. It's a profit center for back of the room sales. And there are going to be people that never cross paths with you, but a book might cross their hands. So, and he'd give out books. He's like, don't give people your business card. Give them a book. They're going to throw your business card away. Give them a book. And he was way ahead of his time in
Way
so many
ahead, way
ways.
ahead. And that's still the case. Like the whole kind of cliche that, the word author is the first part of the word author, like authority, and
Yeah.
being an authority in a field. If you have a book, that's the best business card, because it shows that you're an expert to some degree, and that you have some sort of tangible proof that you've manifested something. And I'm halfway through my first book, and it's been a labor of love, but it's also been something that I haven't been called to force out either. So it's just kind of slowly coming along. So I don't have a
Good.
timeline. I don't have like it's just going to happen when it happens, but it is happening. Um, but I have people that tell me I need to get my stuff together. So we'll see how that plans out. I'm thinking about hiring someone who can kind of interview me to get the rest of it done, because there's a lot of like personal stories in there that I'm running through because they're my stories, but I want someone to tease out the actual events, because it's an inspirational and utilitarian book. It's called Happy Wealth: How to Become Wealthy Happily. It's the 10 steps to the road of wealth, but it's also taught from the eyes of a poor kid from Boston who was able to create wealth for himself and then does it for a living for other people. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I'm on that journey, but there's a name that comes to mind, and I feel like you'll know this name, Mark Victor Hansen.
Oh, I sure do.
Have you had a chance to hobnob and hang out with him in your dealings? Yes.
I do.
Yes.
I do. He was a dear friend of my father. And when I came back and started my podcast last year, I immediately called him. So he's on my podcast. He's just brilliant. He calls me. He's there for me. He's an advocate for me. And he's connected me with like everybody. He's like, not only is he on my podcast, and for our listeners, these are the type of people you need in your life.
No
your advocates are your earth angels. Okay. He wants my success more than me. I'm like, Mark, what are you doing? He's like, get this person and interview this person. And I have another, one of our little booklets, our life-changing classics. The next one's coming out on Buckminster Fuller, because Mark loves Buckminster Fuller. So do I. One of these little, oh, here's the 3 decisions. One of these little booklets,
nice,
which are great business card, by the way. Hey, here's my genius. And I just love Mark. He is so integrated, such a resource, such a giver, and such a synchronicity, and just love him. Jesse, I want to go back to one other thing that you talked about with writing. You brought up a great point. Now, there are millions of wonderful ghostwriters out there that can help you tease out your story. That's their zone of genius. And somebody told me, Tracy, delegate everything but genius. I think that's a quote of somebody's.
Yep.
And I don't mean to not give people credit where credit is due, but when you get into this, hire somebody to help you get it out there.
Agreed. I'm there.
Because otherwise and people are like, I'm like, there's a difference between your comfort zone and your strength zone. You're just not in your strength zone. Like our comfort zone, we blew that open, decades ago. I'm like, there is no fear in this girl, but I am well aware of what I'm good at and what I'll never be good at, because you can't be good at everything. No. So for the listeners out there, really delegate it. If you're still like, I wish this could get done, get it off your plate, because there's other things you need to dig into.
No question. I couldn't agree anymore. Perfectly said.
But so, Mark, what about Mark?
Yeah. Just thinking about him because of the path that your dad was on, and speaking and authorship and being around the world. And this is exactly kind of what Mark's done. And I was introduced to Mark probably a little over a year ago. And he was on the podcast. And then as soon as we connected, he and his wife, Crystal, were on, and they were talking about their new book, Ask, at the time. And it was this beautiful connection. And immediately I introduced him to about 5 or 6 different people, because this is part of what I do. So like when I meet people, I fall in love with them. And much like you mentioned him, he wants to see you win as much or more than like you do. Yes. That's kind of how I am too. And it's like, I want to plug people into my like good people. I want them to, if it's a podcast host, they could be on their podcast. If it's a business acquaintance they could do business with, or whatever it is. I just love making connections, because it's also been part of my secret sauce in business, is like putting people in front of each other. Number one, you're doing your job as a human, it's a feel good. But number 2, karma does come back around one way, shape, or form. So there's a little bit of greed in it too. It's like, yeah, I want to see you win, but at the same time, maybe I'll win down the road. And that's not the main driver, but that is second, third order effect. And when I did that, he hit me back up with like 10 or 15 connections after I gave him 5 or 6. And I'm like, I see you, like, I recognize what you're doing, sir. And I applaud you for your efforts, because like, I usually am the one that does the most referring and connecting, and he just kicked my ass. And like, I'm like, bring it.
Anything like it. Yeah. I've never seen anything like it. I'm like, I need to hire somebody to keep all these connections together. He's no
question. Yeah. The CRM of just like connections from Mark Victor Hansen.
CRM MVH.
Yes. Yeah. You heard it here first. We're going to sell it. We're going to market it. We're going to have somebody build it, because that's not our zone of genius, but we're going to get out and talk about it. So I actually, serendipity would have it, back in February, I believe it was this year, I went to a mastermind in Scottsdale, Arizona with Steve Sims. If you've heard this name before, Steve Sims. He was the founder of Bluefish. He's basically the real life Wizard of Oz. So he could curate experiences for people that own countries. Like he's someone that can have people going swim down to the Titanic or get married at the Vatican. Like he can make the impossible happen. And he has, for the most powerful people in the world. And I was like, I want to hang out with this guy. He's a rebel. He's from East London. He's like a biker. He's done martial arts. He's had a tough life. Like there's a lot of I'm not a biker, but I've had a tough life. I'm from Boston. You know, I've done martial arts and I'm an entrepreneur. I was like, this guy's kind of like weird like I am. Like I want to hang out with this guy. And I went to his event and it was a speakeasy. And the whole idea was you didn't know who was coming to be speakers at this intimate 25 person event. They were with you like all day when you were there. And so one of the days that I was there, lo and behold, I'm eating lunch. I see Mark Victor Hansen and his wife, Crystal, walk right through the front door. We lock eyes. We went right to each other and hugged because we had built this beautiful relationship virtually. And we hadn't seen each other. And it was just this really great thing. And then he comes in with Sharon Lecter and like all these other people. And like, it was just this beautiful week, like these 2 days that we were together. And it was just so synergistic. And he's made an indelible mark in my life, pun intended.
I love it. I love it. And that's what he does. And if you listen to the podcast, he and my dad sold millions and millions and millions of books. And the beauty was I call it OPP, you down with OPP, other people's product, not just my book, my book, my book, my book, my book, my book. But dad's like, not just my book, read other people's books, read lots of great books. And so they move books.
I believe it. And even having like, just knowing, I'm sure probably like Les Brown and some of these other titans, like you've probably plugged into the world's greatest, Tony Robbins and like all these different people. But do you have a personal favorite? Not to ostracize anyone, is there someone that just speaks to your soul in terms of, and it could be your dad, it sounds like, but is there someone that was a speaker, is a thought leader that really captured your heart?
Well, I love Ken Blanchard. He was the reader on my the second reader on my doctoral program too. I love Ken from a leadership perspective. And I admire him from the fact that he took his leadership theory and then wrote the book and then went on to stuff like that. Because why do you get a PhD other than put it in layman's terms and kind of get it out there? The other one, and he's a dear, close personal friend. Oh my gosh, so many of them, Willie Jolly, Les Brown. I mean, they're all, Jim Cathcart, Tony Alessandra, Don Hudson, Mark Sanborn's a dear friend.
Wow.
The other one who I just adore is Bob Berg, Go Givers, a series. Bob is the most authentic, giving, real. I mean, they all are, but he's the one that, like you said, that I spend the most time with. He's the one that if I'm like, I want to put online courses, what am I supposed to do? Well, here, I'm doing the same thing, Tracy.
Wow.
And we did this and this didn't work. And here's a free thing to get in the back end of what we do. Bob will share with me what went wrong as well as what went right.
Beautiful.
And to somebody like me, that's very important because I look at these people and I'm like, they never made a mistake in their life. Not at this stage of the game. Now, we all know in the beginning, the first 10 years, we were just running around like blind mice, bumping into walls. But you kind of figure, tipping point after 10,000 hours. Well, after 5 years, you got to figure it out. Wrong. You know what I'm saying? You know some stuff, but then there's so much more stuff you don't know. So what I love about Bob is, and I'll never forget, prayer of Jabez, Bruce Wilkinson. I remember when I was just coming back to run the business and he's like, okay, so you're running the business, you're writing, you're speaking. Which one do you want to focus on? And I go, none. I want to do them all. And he's like, Tracy, but which is the one? And I go, none. And I was just pushing back like, well, I can do them all. I'm a project manager. I'm a good writer. And why can't I speak? And he's like, you'll find out. I did find out. The other thing was I was so down because you look at everybody and, comparison is the thief of joy. There's that Robert Louis Stevenson quote. But you can't help but compare because you're setting goals and what's my goal and what's my stretch goal. And he said to me, I'm like, oh, well, Mark, I said, Bruce, I'm doing okay with the business. And he goes, well, tell me about it. He goes, do you have any debt? And I go, no. And he goes, you paying all your bills? And I go, yeah. And he goes, do you have profit at the end of the year? And I go, yeah, not much. And he goes, you're doing better than 99% of the people.
No question.
And I was like, what? And he goes, Tracy, you're actually running a business. You're running a business. And that was such a joy to me to realize you got to be better, not necessarily bigger. And so that stuck with me that in everything I do, I'm going to grow organically and smartly because there are people that scale and invest it all in and boy, it's gone. So I just remember different people saying different things like that just changed my world and gave me the real impetus but that was the one thing right at the beginning. He just let me know it's that one line he said to me, but then all the other speakers, the minute I call them like Mark, Victor Hansen, just what can I do for you? Who can I introduce you to? Oh, yeah. And that's your advocates and resources. The other thing for people, you are into the health. The two things I tell people you've got to do. I don't care if you never want to leave your house. You have to dial in your health because you cannot think, you cannot serve, you cannot even feel good unless you dial in your health. This beautiful body, okay, that God has given you that can fight off everything out there. Take care of it, and it will, and you don't have to do a lot, and you can reclaim your health no matter what stage you're in. Number two, build your resources
Yeah.
net. I have so many dear friends that are undergoing crisis and they have nobody, and that is on them. You have to build the resources, the advocates, the connections. Whether you need them, you will need them. And when you're in crisis and free fall is not the time to be going, oh my gosh, I got nobody to turn to. It's just unacceptable in this day and age. Is connect, and they don't even have to be with you physically. But in this day and age, build your resources, because it's not a question of if it'll hit you, but when. We
No
all go
question.
through those life storms. So that's what I tell people. And then when you have those two things, you will be physically and collectively strong enough to weather whatever comes your way.
Yes. Yeah, it's there's this idea called being fit for service. And there's
Hmm.
actually a mastermind that I was a part of, led by an amazing entrepreneur who happens to be on the spiritual path. His name's Aubrey Marcus. He's down in Austin, Texas. He built an amazing company, amazing podcast. He's been a shining light in the world of like consciousness awakening. But he runs this mastermind called Fit for Service, and Fit for Service is built on the foundation of being fit as a human being, as a bringer, warrior of light, if you will, as an entrepreneur, as someone who's just making a difference in the world. You have to be fit, and this goes back to your conversation. It's all fit. It's mental health. It's physical body, because this is the vessel that carries us through this earthly existence. It's spiritually healthy. It's relationship with self and others. It's being fit for service in all those departments, and this military and high level, corporate and entrepreneurship. If you're not fit, if you're not healthy in a lot of those departments or all of them, it's really hard to do this. It's hard to muster the energy to get up and potentially eat a ton of crap all day. Like whether it's fires that are put out, whether it's issues that are happening, whether it's, things that are going sideways that you have to come in and correct. If it's relationships, I mean, you really have to be energetic. You have to be strong of mind, body, and soul to be able to do what we do.
Absolutely. And financial health too. Norman Vincent Peale said it, anxiety has killed more people than any other, all the diseases and wars and everything
Believe it.
combined. So when you are not congruent in all areas of your life, remember, to be integer is one. So you have to be all in and congruent in all areas of your life. And so even if you're healthy, if you're stressing about finances, like Bruce saying that to me, oh, I don't have to stress about that. I'm healthy, from a bottom line standpoint.
Yes.
But you got to dial in. I tell people, you have to, and even the physical thing though, I always tell people, whether it's spiritually, professionally, relationally, financially, whatever it is, you always can partner physical. Okay. Because the more you dial in your physical, that's the springboard, because we're still just mere flesh, and we're just a vapor
This
that's
is
going to
the vehicle
evaporate.
for our consciousness and
Yeah.
soul.
Yeah. But this is it. We still have this. So really, always dial that in first, because no matter how successful you are in other areas, you're not going to be able to, get there.
This is part of like my core tenet, my ethos is health is wealth. And I am in a wealth management business as a fiduciary. And I will tell you, no question, everyone I've ever met that I've served for as a client, my client family, they would trade every penny, period, of all their wealth to have their health back if they lost their health. No question.
Absolutely. And
And
the beauty is we can get help no matter, this, you talk to people. But I tell people, and this is my sociological studies. Look, when we used to get on planes, look at the people sitting in first class. What do they look like?
yeah,
What are they doing?
yeah,
They're reading. They're typically well appointed, and they're typically height weight proportionate. Now I know this is a big, but I would hope the one thing that COVID taught us, when they'd say stay healthy, I'm like, well, you got to get healthy first. How can you stay healthy
I
if you're sitting
know.
at home eating Twinkie?
I
Come on, guys,
know.
stop. And I mean, it's like telling somebody who's single, stay married. Well, you got to get married before you can stay married. So, and I walk around and I look at people and I watch different groups of people. And when you go in there, you can look at them. And that's not snobbery or not being body conscious. It's people, it's habits.
Yes.
And your body is a reflection of your habits.
No question.
I reclaim my health at 55. Okay. Cause I'm like, well, Tracy, it's just the age. It's postmenopause. That's just the way it is. And I'm like, bull crap. I see women 20 years older than me that are trim and that look great and they're together. Okay. And so don't tell me it can't be done. Go out there and do it. And I just tell people, if you want to live that style, you don't see people that are out of whack physically in their 80s. So if you do that, you're choosing to trade off. But we all have choices.
We
And
do.
that's it. Yeah.
And we make them every day. And it's interesting because, COVID is like a whole nother podcast episode, but one of the narratives we were missing from the leaders of politics and medical, most of them were not talking about how to create health. They were talking about vaccine and mask procedures and social distancing and more of the kind of like the small ball, like more of the they were playing defense instead of playing offense.
Sure, reaction, not prevention.
No
And
question.
as well as I do, a great life is all about preventative maintenance. That's why you have that network of people. You don't wait until the proverbial crap hits the fan. You do it ahead of time.
I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second because the few things that we can absolutely control that are free, we can get every day, and we could do 3 of them at once. So the 3, maybe even 4 most healing things that you could do for your body to get into health and alignment: get outside, get some sun. So the opposite of what they were saying, keep us inside. So get some sun, 15 to 20 minutes a day, direct sunlight, get some movement in, get the body moving, and then ground. Take your shoes off and step on the ground. Those 3 things alone can propel your health very far ahead. And then here's the thing: you can go for a walk, just walk. And those 4 things, if you do, you need some sort of strength, whether it's yoga, whether it's, body weight, whether it's weights, whatever you're into, but the body is asking to be strong. And the sun, the movement, the grounding, it puts you in this beautiful alignment. But also what it does is, and you talked about this, and this is a really big thing I talk about even now at 39 years old, I'm very cognizant of it. How many people did you hear about in your life that have fallen, broken a hip, and died? And that's fragility. And so being anti-fragile and being strong, being fit for service. And I forget which philosopher it was. It was Socrates or Plato, one of the two. And they said, it is the charge, because they called these people citizens back in the day. It's the charge of every citizen to hone the strength of their body. Because what a failure it is for that citizen to not know the greatness of what they're capable of. Like, that's kind of the gist of the story. It's like work on your body so that you could be powerful in every other area of life. I think it's especially for entrepreneurs and what we do. I personally believe it's the only way to really show up powerfully.
Oh, and no doubt. The other thing is, and because everybody likes to give this societal virtue signaling argument about everything going on right now, when you don't take care of yourself and you put the drain on the medical establishment, that hurts all of us.
No question.
Okay. Clearly, 20% of the population is eating up 80% of the healthcare costs.
Yep.
Why is that? That's not going to be me, because I am working hard to take care of myself. But everybody's talking about, do the right thing. Come on, guys. Then you really better do the right thing, and you better get off sugar, and you better stop doing drugs, and you better quit, clogging your. Come on. And I'm not talking about hereditary stuff. Okay. But I tell people, all right, do you believe we evolved? If you do, then somehow in the billions of years, we had to have developed something resilient in us, right?
No
right?
question.
To come out of nothing and then evolve to this. Or if you believe we are made in God's image, well, that's pretty powerful too, because God don't make junk. Either way, this is such a gift. Treat it as such.
No
and
question.
People are just not doing that. And yet there's this, poo-poo about, shaming everybody else. And I'm like, but stop that. Take care of your own health.
And think about no, this is beautiful.
I just got off on that because I'm just
right up my wheelhouse. I love this conversation. The other part of it too, outside of being a burden on the medical industry, is think about the people that you're impacting with your actions, your kids. And if you're a couch potato and you're throwing down potato chips, and like, here's the thing, I like junk food like everybody else, and I like that stuff, but I do work my ass off literally to be able to enjoy those things. And I fast every day, and I take cold showers, and I train every day, and I feed my mind and my soul. And so there's a balance. It's like the Pareto principle, 80-20, 80% of what you do needs to be healthy and needs to
Mhm.
be mindful and needs to be, well done. The other 20%, live life. Like I'm the
Right,
financial planner that says live life today, but don't run out of money in the future. You know what I
right.
mean?
Right, but that takes discipline and
No
that takes
question.
ownership and all that all good stuff. But I can remember when COVID first came out, and the one article I read, and I read all the medical journals, was, oh my gosh, they're out of Twinkies and stuff like that. And right away I thought, oh Lord, this is bad. Because
Yeah.
if this is what people are sequestering and junk it, then we got a worse problem than the virus. We got a
No
bad one.
question.
Yeah.
No question. So let's jump real quick. Talk about what you got going on today, what you're doing today, how you're showing up in the world.
Wow, thank you. I am showing up in the world in several different ways. Right now, and just being completely transparent, I'm probably a little pulled a little bit too thin. I have a resource constraint. So I'm really looking to do all these things and keep offloading. And I
Yep.
think that's one thing every day I really get, and it starts with the night before. What do I need to get done today? And what can get parked on plan B or delegated to somebody else? So we're publishing, putting together programs for speaking. I'm recording podcasts and going in and shipping books because we still have an old fashioned online store and warehouse where I go in and I physically pack books because I still love the mechanics of running a small business. It's
Nice.
like gardening, shipping books. I've done it since I was a baby, and it's just, there's something fun about it. Whether I should be doing it or not, I still get great joy out of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like just walking out in the sun. So I'm shipping, publishing, creating a lot of new content, but an awful lot of reviewing manuscripts and looking for people to be on my podcast like yourself. And I'm just trying to put my words down so that I can share with other leaders a little bit and help them on their journey.
Talk about your podcast a little bit. What's the idea of it? What's the experience been like for you?
The experience has been phenomenal. The theme is the price of leadership. So this is really, I am a leader's leader. In other words, we're going to talk about the tough stuff. Like, you got to have cred to be in this group. But this is not going to be, well, if you just treat people right, they'll surprise you. Okay. No, I don't know who you've ever, or you have to just bring out the best in people. Well, what if they don't have the best in them? Okay.
Yeah.
And if you've never had that, then praise God, but you probably will someday because people are inherently selfish, myself included.
Yeah.
Okay. So the podcast is really Leaders on Leadership, where my father gave a speech called The Price of Leadership. And he says, if you really want to be wearing the mantle of leadership, here's the price you got to pay: loneliness, weariness, abandonment, and vision.
Mm.
Well, and we don't want to hear that stuff. We want to
Mm.
hear about perks, jets, corner office, big salary, but there's a price you have to pay. So we really talk about that with other leaders from all different walks of life about, what was loneliness like for you as a leader? And again,
Yes.
like everything, there's two sides to it. There's good loneliness, and then there's bad loneliness. There's good weariness, and then there's great weariness. So we really unpack it and say, what would you do? What advice would you give to a leader if they're in a season of abandonment? And again,
Yes.
abandonment is focus. You got to get rid of 90% of the junk you're doing today and focus on that 10%, because that's where your best money making and your brilliance is going to shine.
No
That's
question.
the hardest thing for me, Jesse, because like you, FOMO, squirrel, I could write 10 books in a day. That doesn't mean I should.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So focus.
It's interesting because even and I've experienced this personally as an entrepreneur and as a business person, where even though I'm in a people centric business, whether it's connections, network, clients, just people that I do life with, it can get very lonely sometimes. And there's those battles, those seasons where you really have to pull your resources and plug into people and ask for help and reach out and show up for other people. And it's balance. It's never going to be perfect, but it's something where you gotta be mindful and know your triggers and know how to like overcome those spells if you go through spells. And the other piece to that, I saw this quote the other day, a buddy of mine, Casanova Brooks, who's got an incredible story. He's a real estate investor. He's a podcast host. He does all these different things, and he's got a great story where he got stage 4 cancer. They gave him a week to live. This was years ago. He's beaten it, and it was his mindset of either I'm going to beat this or I'm going to beat this. He lost his mom, his job, and his house all in the same week, separate from that incident with cancer, and he's overcome all those things. And he put out a post. It's a great human being, number one, but number two, he's been through a lot of stuff that he's kind of in the same narrative we've talked about, people that have overcome and become these powerhouse, these lighthouses. And he put out a post the other day, and it was speaking to loneliness. And it said, it was lonely when you first started, and it's lonely at the top. Choose your lonely. Like, it's going to be lonely. And like, you
Right.
can, yeah.
Right. And, and there are times where, that you do feel loneliness. And, I look at Christ out in the desert that went for 40 days alone, and prayer and fasting. There are going to be some demons that can only be kicked by getting alone in prayer. So loneliness is a beautiful thing. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, Jesus modeled it throughout the New Testament.
Yeah.
But there's a bad loneliness. And as you so clearly brought out, and you talk about balance, and somebody said to me, Tracy, there really is no such thing as balance. And you really alluded to it, what you said. There are going to be times where I go through life where I'm good on my own for a month. And then other times where I hit a season of, I need that collective efficacy of being with people.
Yes.
So just know your triggers. And, we all are on these biorhythm cycles. And there are going to be times where you're really dialed in and you're okay walking alone, and other times you're like, I need a traveling partner. Just be cognizant of it.
Yes.
And be ready for what your triggers are. And because at any given day, it's probably going to change. So don't try and structure and systems are great, but you also got to be attentive to where you are and what your triggers are, and kind of go with the flow.
Self-awareness, humility, and relationships will take you a long way, and asking for help and being of help to other people when they need it, right? It's the circle of life.
Ask. And I tell people that people aren't mind readers. Even people complain about their boss. Did you say something to them? No. They're not God. They don't look into your heart and know your motives. Ask. And Mark Victor Hansen with that books. And these advocates, I was like, I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to ask. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? And the minute I started asking, people want to help you.
No question.
People that truly are in your corner, they want your success more than even you want your success. Ask. And people are like, well, I don't know where to find them. Well, get on LinkedIn and start connecting. Okay?
Exactly.
And then you be a resource to people. But they're not just going to come knock on your door. They can't read your mind. Get out there and ask.
So 100%. And to leave it on that note, I'll just say that I have found probably 99 times out of 100 when I asked, people delivered and people showed up. And it's like, you just got to get over the fear of what if. It's always the story with like false evidence appearing real, face everything and rise. These beautiful acronyms. It's just ask.
Right. And if they can't give it to you, they'll direct, like me with publishing. That's not really my thing, my book, but I'm going to tell you who. Just like after this, I'm going to connect you with some of the wonderful ghostwriters that I have, because I may not, it's not in my zone of genius, but I have resources. I have the most tremendous tribe in my life, and they can do anything for anybody.
Try to find me one, if you can, that's a high functioning hippie.
You got it. You got it.
Someone who might be on the path, but that would be beautiful. But listen,
I love it.
You are incredible. I'm excited to see where our journey leads. I know it's going to be powerful. I know that we're going to start pulling the old MVH and plugging people into one another and supporting one another. I already know it's already happened. Now it's just time's going to catch up. So first of all, let me be the first one from the audience and the viewers and the listeners to say thank you, number one, for who you are. Thank you for showing up in the world powerfully and being authentic and real and sharing so much value. I just want to send you a ton of love.
Oh, Jesse, thank you so much for your energy, for what you're doing, for sharing your journey. And to the listeners out there, thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you so much. She's the amazing, the mighty, the powerful Dr. Tracey Jones. I'm Jesse T. Be sure to catch us on next week's episode of The Jesse T. Show.